America is broken, and it's becoming a third world country. This is something we're starting to hear a lot. But is it true? Let's look at the facts. And be sure to let me know down below if you agree or disagree with these facts, or if you see these things in your daily life. So the first thing, the cost of everything keeps going up. Wages don't. So things are very, very unaffordable. That ties into inflation. Inflation is at an all-time high. People are having a really hard time making ends meet. That's true. That's a fact. That's leading to homelessness, unlike anything we've ever seen before. There are almost 1 million people now in this country that are homeless. Food insecurity is at an all-time high. It is very hard for people to source food, especially proper food, proper nutrition, because it's one thing to go to the grocery store and buy junk food, but it's an entirely different thing to go to the grocery store and to be able to afford actual healthy food. And that's especially true for people that are below the poverty line. And what does that lead to? It leads to people becoming very sick, very obese, and being riddled with chronic health issues, which also leads to people being poor, because then your health is destroyed. So all your money is now being tied up in medical expenses. And that's another reason why things are kind of going downhill, because healthcare costs are at an all-time high, not just for the country, but they're more expensive here than anywhere else on the entire planet. And not just healthcare costs, but the costs of pharmaceuticals and health insurance. It is very, very expensive to be sick here. And the bad part about that is that most people are sick. As a matter of fact, over 70% of the entire population are either overweight or obese, and almost every single American in the country is living with at least one chronic condition. Another surprising fact is that the overwhelming majority of Americans are living in debt, and not just any debt, but substantial debt. Also not a very good thing, considering poverty is at an all-time high, the cost of everything is at an all-time high, everyone's unhealthy, overweight or obese, and all these things are kind of compounding on top of each other, and it's leading to substantial debt. And another thing that plays into that is this consumerism mindset that we're all fed and led to believe that that's what we need, that buying more stuff is going to make us happy. And not just buying more stuff, everything is set up to be a consumer-based subscription type society. And that's exactly what we're facing right now. And all these things lead to more debt, because that's just more money that we're shelling out. And as a matter of fact, it's more money that we don't have that we're shelling out. Because another surprising fact is that the top 1% of the people in this country have most of the wealth, and the bottom 99% of the people in this country, and a matter of fact, I would say everyone else that actually makes the country run, because we're the hardworking men and women that are the backbone of this country, somehow we don't have all the money. And that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But when you understand how things work and you understand how the country is set up, you'll understand that it actually does make sense, and things are working exactly as they are designed. Because this country, as a matter of fact, is a country of corporations. It is owned and controlled by corporations and private investment groups. And when you understand that, you'll also realize that it's not about the consumer. It's not about us little guys, the hardworking men and women that make the country run. It's not about allowing us to achieve our dreams or get ahead. It's about keeping us trapped. It's about extracting as much money from us as they possibly can so that they get richer and they remain in the top 1% of people that are the wealthiest in the country. Everything is set up to benefit and favor the people at the top, not us. Every bit of this country is all money and greed driven. That's what everything is all about. That's how our society is designed, and that's exactly why we are in this position and why there are so many people saying that America is becoming a third world country. And us as the little guys at the bottom that don't hold all the money, we have to realize a few things. And one of the primary things that we need to realize is that the stuff that we're led to believe is going to fulfill us and make us happy is actually 100% a big fat lie. Because we're told that if we work harder and we work more and we're willing to go the extra mile, that we'll eventually make enough money so that we can get ahead, so that we can get all the stuff in life that we want. And the stuff in life that we want, we're told, is all the materialistic stuff that surrounds us. But the fact of the matter is, the hardest working people in the country are the ones that are often the poorest. And that is because working hard and going the extra mile doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to make more money. The people at the top that are making all the money aren't the ones that are busting their butts every single day working 2 to 3 jobs. They're the ones that put their money in things that allows it to work for them. And they're the ones that realize a lot of these truths, that money is not scarce. It's actually very abundant. And to get it, you actually have to do the opposite of all the things that we're told, because life for them looks entirely different than it does for us. For us, it's about dangling that carrot. They instill as much fear into you as they possibly can so that you're scared to step outside your lane. You're scared to do things that challenge the narrative. You're scared to take risks that might actually afford you the ability to create wealth for yourself. But then they dangle the carrot in front of you and they give you just enough for you to maintain that hope, to keep pushing forward, to think if I just go the additional step further, or I just push myself a little harder, or maybe I pick up that extra job or those extra hours, that I will be able to get the money that I need to buy myself all the things that I think I need in order to be happy. And it's because of that carrot, and it's because of that fear that we are stuck in this perpetual cycle of never actually being able to get ahead, because they've created a perfect balance that keeps us exactly where they want us, which is us making them more money. And one of the things that really woke me up to this is traveling. When I started traveling around the world, I started to see things for what they really are. A lot of the countries that we consider third world are actually the ones that are kind of doing it right. They focus on family, they focus on friendship and tradition and culture, and they don't focus so much on money, profit, and greed. And most of these countries aren't run and controlled by corporations. There are more small, local family-owned businesses. And because of that, food is abundant, because a lot of people are still growing their own food. Skills and trades and small business owners are also very abundant, because people actually have the drive and ambition to get out there and do stuff. And in a lot of cases, there aren't a lot of large jobs that they can go to, so they have to do that. They have to create something for themselves so that they can make ends meet. And while they might seem poor on the outside and they might have the lowest amount of money, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're the most unhappy. Because I think in this country, a lot of us are very, very unhappy, not just with our own lives, but with the way things around us are going, with the way our country is headed. And I can't help but think that a lot of that is due to the way things are set up. Because I can tell you that the moment I got out of this country and I started going overseas, I started spending substantially less money. And what I realized is that we are getting absolutely screwed when it comes to the cost of things here. I'll give you a couple examples of this. When I was in Korea back in 2017, I got very, very sick. And I actually had to take an ambulance ride to the hospital. I had to get an EKG, a chest x-ray. I had to get labs drawn. I spent the night in the hospital. And that entire thing, that entire experience, to include the ambulance ride, all that, it cost me $350 cash out of pocket. And the times that I've gotten sick here in the US and I've had to take an ambulance ride, the bare minimum that I've spent going to the hospital getting that type of stuff done is about $18,000. And even with having insurance, I ended up paying about $8,000 out of pocket, and in some cases even more than that. So when it comes to healthcare and medical expenses, we are really getting hosed. But even when it comes to travel, in 2023 I went to Europe and I traveled to 10 different countries. I had a rental car every single place I went. I stayed in either a hotel or an Airbnb, and I took 6 plane rides to different countries throughout Europe. The most I spent on airfare was $110. Hotels and Airbnbs were also extremely cheap, and I ended up traveling for 30 days, 10 different countries in Europe for $1,600 total out the door. That is all I spent. And here in America, you're lucky to get a plane ticket from the East Coast to the West Coast for cheaper than $1,600. It's probably very unlikely that's going to happen. As a matter of fact, you can rack up a $1,600 bill just by staying in a hotel for about a week. And it doesn't stop there. The cost of food and the cost of pretty much everything else, anything that you can possibly imagine, is going to be much cheaper overseas. And you can't even make the argument that it's because these countries are less developed than the US or they're third world countries, because most of the countries I traveled to were some of the wealthiest per capita in the world. So the reason this is the case is because of the way things are set up. It's all by design. It is, again, to keep us trapped, to keep us in that lower 90-some%, to not allow us to ever reach the top 1% of the wealthiest people in the country. And we have to face the music on this. When it comes to the American dream, we have been sold a bill of lies. And that's not to say that the American dream isn't still alive and well, and that this country isn't a great and amazing country. It's just that we need to open our minds. We need to see things for what they really are. And in order to do that, we have to be willing to challenge the narrative, to sit back and ask ourselves, why is it that I'm working 2 jobs and I'm putting in all these extra hours, yet somehow I still can't make ends meet? Why is it that no matter how hard I try, I can't get ahead? Why is it that I can't get out of debt? Why is it that I'm going to be working my entire life until I'm 70 years old before I can get out and enjoy my life and do the things that I want and get out of life what I want? You have to peel back the layers and expose the dark and uncomfortable truth about things. But when you do that, that's when you can start to become free. That's when you start to realize what it's actually going to take for you to be able to build wealth, to get ahead, and maybe not even become the top 1% of the people out there, because that's going to be very difficult for the average American to do. But at least put yourself in a position where you're not trapped, where you're not scared, where you don't spend every second of every day worrying that if you get laid off or your car breaks down or you get sick, that you're going to be out on the street, that you're going to be homeless because you don't have enough money saved up to get by even a couple days if you weren't working. Or if some sort of emergency happens and you have to fork out that money, it's not going to completely bankrupt you. For most of us, that's all we need to feel comfortable. That's all we need to stop letting fear control us. And I can tell you from experience that doing that is not as hard as we're led to believe, because they absolutely want us to believe that it is very hard. And again, that ties back to this whole fear scenario. They try to instill this fear in us. That way they can control us. That way they can keep us in this system and keep us working our entire lives so that they can extract as much as they possibly can out of us for our entire lives. But how do we get away from that? How do we escape the grasps of this corporate-based America? Well, the number one thing is that, just like I mentioned, you have to come to terms with all these things. Keep an open mind and realize that we have been fed a bill of lies that is a mile long, and most of the stuff we're told is either absolutely false or it's extremely misleading. That also means setting your priorities straight, realizing that it's not about money. It's not about all this stuff that we're led to believe. It's not about consumerism and materialistic crap. All these things that we think are going to make us happy are not going to make us happy. That is the very reason why some of the richest, most successful people in the world are often the most miserable. It's because they get all the stuff in life that they believed they wanted their entire lives. And then all of a sudden they realize that it didn't do anything to fulfill them. And they still have this massive void in their soul because there is something missing. And that is because these things are not going to make us happy. What is going to make us happy and fulfilled is having a reason to get out of bed every morning. It's having something to work towards, having goals, figuring out what exactly you want to get out of life. For some people, maybe that means starting a family. For other people, maybe that means building something for yourself and having a legacy that you can leave behind. But the most important thing that we can do for ourselves to realize what that thing is to either tune out or turn off. Drown out all the noise, sit in silence, take time to yourself, and figure out what it is deep down that you want the most in this life. That can take some time and it can take some real soul searching. But once you figure that out, then you can figure out what it's going to take for you to get those things. What in your life do you have to change in order to make your dreams come true? And when you're thinking about this, leave everything on the table, because for some people, maybe it means leaving this country. Maybe it means doing things that go against the grain, that challenge the narrative. Maybe it's things that some people aren't going to agree with, and maybe it's things that are going to make you very uncomfortable. But you have to decide, what are you willing to sacrifice, and to what lengths are you willing to go in order to get out of life the things that you want. And if you're anything like me, when you come to those realizations, you're also going to realize that the things that you're willing to give up and the sacrifices that you're willing to make, while they might seem scary, they're not nearly as scary as remaining trapped in this system that is literally designed to keep you trapped until death. Because what I realized is that the fear of staying trapped in that system and not going after the things in life I want was much scarier than taking the leap and potentially failing. And once the fear of staying in that system became much worse than the fear of walking away from it, I knew it was time to go. And that decision alone was one of the best decisions of my entire life. And how is that working out for me now? Am I successful? Have I gotten out of life all the things I've wanted? Well, these are valid questions, and they're questions I often ask myself. But a question that's even more important than that is, what does my definition of success look like? I think about that question a lot, and the conclusion I've come to is that by me simply walking away and getting away from that system, I'm already successful. So now all I have to do is ride the wave. So my question to you is, what does success look like for you? And that is perhaps one of the most important questions that we can all ask ourselves. What does our version of success look like, and to what lengths are we willing to go in order to achieve it? And to answer the question on whether or not America is becoming a third world country, try visiting one. That'll give you all the perspective you need. And don't get me wrong, there's some things about this country that absolutely suck. We just talked about a lot of them, and there's a lot more. For example, the fact that the system is 100% designed to keep us trapped and for us to fail. But that should be all the evidence we need to stop participating in that system. And as you dig deeper and search for the answer to this question, also consider that every single one of us, it doesn't matter who you are or where you come from, we all have access to the same information and resources, and we are all blessed with the ability to wake up every single day into a world of unlimited possibilities and start fresh. So I would turn the question back to you. Are we living in a third world country, or are we simply losing sight of our true potential? You decide.